College Savings Iowa is now iSave 529, and it can do more than take your child to college. It's their passport to a bright future, because funds can be used for K-12 tuition, trade schools, graduate degrees, books, and everything they need to get anywhere they want to go. Register by September 30th at iowa529contest.com for a chance to win a $5,290 contribution. iSave 529, for every child, for any adventure.
You're listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
You're listening to the Archaeology Show. TAS goes behind the headlines to bring you the real stories about archaeology and the history around us. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Archaeology Show, episode 278. That's when I say it.
On today's show, we talk about cave-dwelling Christians, the mysterious Phaistos disc, and Bronze Age Scandinavian boat building.
Let's dig a little deeper and find ourselves a good quality host for this show.
Why are you firing me again?
All right, welcome to the Archaeology Show.
Episode
278. We already did the intro.
I thought you always did the episode number. Well, I guess you don't. That's because you were trying to get me to do the intro, and I don't do it.
No. All right. So, since only that one person who hates us in reviews doesn't like to know where we're at, you can just like advance 30, 60 seconds maybe.
I know. We don't have a lot to say this time, I don't think.
I know.
We just moved today.
Yeah.
To a new area.
We don't really know anything about it because I've never been here before, but we're in the Jersey Shore.
Yeah. Way south Jersey Shore.
Yeah. About an hour south of Atlantic City.
Yeah. Like almost Cape May, I think.
Yeah.
Ocean. What did I say the name of that city was? Sea Isle City?
Yeah.
Sea Isle City is our closest little ocean point. So we're going to go explore that for dinner after this. But yeah.
So that's where we're at.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've got a few news articles today, and that's what we're going to do. So the first one is about inbreeding Christians.
Yep. And cave dwellers.
Yeah.
Cave dwelling inbreeding Christians.
What else you do in a dark cave?
Right. So this article was published in Live Science, and it is titled, DNA Reveals Inbreeding Smallpox and Violent Ends Among Cave-Dwelling Christians in Medieval Spain.
Sounds like a party.
It does, indeed. I kind of felt like the violent ends piece of it was a little bit exaggerated after reading the article, but we'll get to that.
Yeah.
The rest of it, though, is definitely true.
Everybody back then had a violent end.
Well, there were certainly a lot of them.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a Christian community that lived in caves that were carved into a rocky outcrop in medieval Spain. And that in itself is pretty unique, but not completely unique, because medieval cave communities can be found across the Iberian Peninsula in both Spain and Portugal in this time period. Yeah.
And by the way, the pictures of this outcrop and these caves, just like from what look like drone shots in the article, are super cool.
Yeah, so cool.
Yeah.
You can see where they like literally carved out these entrance points into these caves. And yeah, I mean, why would they do that? It's a very unconventional location. And why didn't they just live in a village like everybody else did? We don't really know the answer to that. There's not a documented reason for choosing a cave over, village life.
I mean, my guess is it was either easy to carve it out. Maybe there's already sort of a semi-cave structure there, and they just kind of augured it out a bit, made it more homey, and it was easy to defend, maybe,
True.
temperature controlled.
Yeah.
You don't have to go out and buy a bunch of, cut down a bunch of trees and, make yourself a structure. I mean, we were just talking today. I want to live in a cave. I want to own a restaurant in a cave.
You want to live in a silo. That's more, that's a little bit different than a cave.
But I mean, kind of. It's a man-made cave.
Yeah, it's underground.
Yeah.
But
Indeed.
I'm not super interested in that idea. It seems like really dark and probably pretty cold.
No, you make your own light and you make your own heat.
Yeah.
You control your environment.
I know, but it's always going to feel like a little bit artificial though.
Well, depending on how you do it.
Yeah.
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 So, but I think with modern tools and things like that, it doesn't have to feel artificial.
Yeah.
Yeah. But back then, it
wouldn't have felt artificial back then. It just would have felt probably like a cold, damp cave would be my guess. And
and dark all the time.
Dark, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's got to be for like fortification reasons. Like why else, right?
Right.
So this study looks at the remains of the individuals that were buried in the cemetery that was associated with this community. I think there was a church there as well. So we know they were Christian, and they're all buried in this cemetery together.
Yeah. They analyzed the DNA for ancestry of the community as well as relationships to each other and the diseases that they had. So basically just trying to find out everything they could from the DNA.
Yeah.
Yeah. The settlement of Las Gobas occupied the caves from the mid-6th century to the 11th century CE.
Yeah. And this is kind of an interesting time period, and it could maybe explain a little bit why they chose to live in caves. But this would be after the fall of the Roman Empire, which was in 476 CE. And the Iberian Peninsula was under control of the Visigoths, who were from Northern Europe at that time. And then in 711 CE, the Visigoths fell to the invading Muslim armies from North Africa. So, there's like a little bit of unrest going on here. Who's leading this area? This is a rural area, like kind of far away from the city centers. So maybe it just felt safer to them to like move into a cave where they could protect themselves a little bit better. I could see that,
It's funny how we talk about history, though, because we're like talking about these time periods that are 300 years
they are very far apart
from each other. And we're like talking about a people who are like, wow, that happened and then this happened.
Yeah.
Maybe it would just be safer to be over here.
Right. But in our defense, 711 CE would have been not too long after this community moved into the cave, because I think it was mid 6th century, right? So that's kind of close. So maybe there was just some fear over these invading armies from North Africa, and they just, were like, nope, don't trust this, don't know what's going on. We need to go keep doing our Christian thing in a cave over here where nobody's going to bother us. Yeah. Just a theory, because we still don't know.
Right. Yeah, in the northern part of the peninsula, the Christian kingdoms continued and eventually reclaimed territory from the Africans. So you got that.
Yeah, Las Gobas is located in northern Spain in the Burgos province. And it's very far from the urban centers of Toledo, Granada, and Cordoba, which is where we get most of our information about this time and place. And they are cities that were under the North African control for a little while, too, I believe. They're heavily influenced by the North African invasion, for sure.
Was Toledo Christian at the time?
I think so.
Was it Holy Toledo?
Oh my God. Why do you do this to
I was
me?
just wondering if it was holy
Why
or
does this
not
happen
holy.
to me? Why is this my life?
Was Toledo holy, or was it in fact not holy?
No.
Historically speaking.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just I don't know why.
I'm going to go with no.
Okay.
So back to the cemetery that's associated with Las Gobas. We can tell that it was used continuously from the 7th to the 11th century.
Holy Toledo.
Nope. We're very far from Toledo here. Like very, very far. And there were 42 individuals excavated from the cemetery, and 39 of those had enough material that they could run genetic analysis on.
Yeah. 33 had enough DNA for sex identification. So we know that 22 males existed and 11 females. So I'm wondering, they had enough remains to run genetic analysis through DNA, but they didn't have enough skeletal material to sex the individuals?
I think that it's just not as
where'd
good.
they get the genetic evidence? They just get it from hair, I wonder, maybe?
Well, from the bones.
Or,
you can get genetic material out of bones.
I understand they got it out of the bones, but the bones weren't formed enough to sex the skeletons?
So with my experience with sexing a skeleton, and I did do some of that in college, it was my focus, you need the pelvic bones, basically.
Yeah.
And if
none of the others are
they can be used, the jaw, or not the jaw, but the skull bones, some of the skull bones can be used, but it's not as good.
Yeah.
The pelvis is really the best indicator from what I remember from school. This is 20 years ago, almost at this point.
Yeah.
Those were the best indicator. And if you didn't have them, or if they were degraded too much and you couldn't see the different markers that you're looking for, then you wouldn't be able to tell. And even then, it's only with like a low percentage of certainty, because there can be male remains that present more female and vice versa, because there are larger women. It's mostly based on size. Like there's a lot of it's based on size. So larger women might present as male and vice versa. And how can you know? So DNA is the final word on sex for a skeleton, for sure.
Right. So maybe they could a little bit, but they didn't have enough, and it probably would have been conclusive.
Yeah, and they're verifying with the DNA. That would be my guess anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Well, of their ancestry, they found out they were overwhelmingly local Iberian. So...
Yeah, and I guess that was surprising given how close they were to the northern edge of the North African invasion border, which I guess was called Al-Andalus. That's what they called that kind of northern boundary of as far as they reached anyway.
Yeah.
So you would think there would be some like mixing between the populations, but I guess, they put themselves in a cave. So there wasn't so much mixing.
Yeah, and there was some evidence of violence in the earlier skeletons either. Obviously not the genetic evidence, just to the skeletons.
Visible evidence.
Yeah, visible evidence. In fact, one guy took a sword to the head and apparently survived because there's evidence of healing.
Yeah, that's crazy. But from what I read in the article, I didn't see any other violent episodes noted. Maybe there was some other stuff that they didn't really talk about, but it actually seems like it was kind of a peaceful community, and that was the one example of like kind of extreme violence. Like a sword to the head is kind of a lot.
Guess he was saved by Jesus.
Maybe. Or cave life, I guess.
I don't know. Yeah, probably just backed into a sword. I mean, it's a cave. It was dark. He's like, jeez, what are you doing?
Wow.
Sword down. I told you always sword down.
That would be a really sharp sword if you could do that to yourself.
Well, somebody's just like walking through sword up.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So the DNA also revealed inbreeding, which of course we know all about with the...
The what? How are you finishing that sentence? Who are you about to accuse of inbreeding right now?
Of course,
I can't wait to hear.
All about.
Okay, we're not going to accuse anybody of inbreeding
with
today.
Cave peoples.
So moving on from that.
61% of the individuals with enough genetic material to test showed signs of inbreeding.
Yeah. That's a pretty big percentage.
Yeah.
So
what happens in the dark stays in the dark.
The authors suggest that they likely practice endogamy, which is basically marrying only within the community. And
which is a pretty actually religious thing to do. If you want to stay in the Christian community and there aren't any other Christians around.
Right. What else are you going to do? Yeah.
And you're like, well, cousin Tina over there is looking pretty Christian.
Oh my God.
And there's no other Christians.
Oh man.
So
it could be too that there were other Christians around, but maybe this population developed like a very specific like brand of Christianity that they weren't willing to go outside of. Yeah. And it just didn't maybe spread to the other non-cave dwelling populations in the area. That's possible. I don't know how they would look for evidence of that, but I guess it could have happened.
Right.
So in addition to the endogamy piece of this, they also tested the DNA of some of the earlier male remains, and they found that those earliest males were actually close kin, and they're guessing that maybe this was like a patrilocal community, or that this community was started by a patrilocal group. And what that means is in a early Christian society, often the males of the family would stay together and live in one household together, and the wives would move in with them. So it's possible that like mother and father and then all their sons and all their sons' wives, however many they had, moved into this cave initially, and then the population grew from there and became what it was for 400 years that they lived in this cave.
Yeah.
So they just have a lot of similarities between the paternal DNA. Yeah. Yep.
And finally, they found evidence of smallpox, which was more similar actually to strains that came from Scandinavia, Russia, and Germany. So, yeah. Yeah,
I guess that was interesting because past research indicated smallpox came to this area with the Muslim invaders, but this would be another route, or this represents another route for the disease to have entered the area. So don't always blame the Africans, I guess. All right. Well, that's enough Christian inbreeding for one segment. So now we're going to go over to Crete, and we're going to learn a little bit about the Phaistos disc and an undecipherable script that we literally know nothing about. My favorite kind of archaeology. There you go. Back in a minute.
People are driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. The hiring process can be slow and overwhelming. Simplify hiring with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform. With over 350 million global monthly visitors according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/PODKATZ12. That's Indeed.com/PODKATZ12. Terms and conditions apply.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Baker's for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
People are driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. The hiring process can be slow and overwhelming. Simplify hiring with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform. With over 350 million global monthly visitors according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/PODKATZ12. That's Indeed.com/PODKATZ12. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back to the Archaeology Show, episode 278. And this is segment 2.
Mm-hmm. See, you do say the episode number. I guess you just say it in segment 2.
I do.
But not in segment 1.
Because we literally just said it. Have you ever done this show before?
I mean, I edit it every week. I just don't do that talking part. So,
incidentally, we're looking for a new co-host to the Archaeology Show.
Yeah, you did just try to fire yourself, but I wouldn't let you.
Well, now I'm firing you.
No,
actually.
You can't fire me. I'm the glue.
Wow. Yes, you are stuck. No, so this one is from National Geographic, and this actually isn't, I mean, it's a news article, but it's not really news. It's just like interesting information because somebody just decided to write about it because it's National Geographic and it's what they do.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like educational, so to speak. There's no real new information.
Yeah.
But we're going to learn about something new that you may know nothing about.
Yeah. I love these articles because I hadn't heard of the Phaistos disc before, and
I think maybe I
had. Had I heard of it?
I think you had, because didn't they say it's in the Heracleon Archaeology Museum?
It is, but we didn't go to the museum. We didn't have time when we were there.
I thought we saw that. I feel like I've seen it.
We went to,
or I've heard about it.
The palace at Knossos is the palace that we went to on Crete, but we didn't have time to go to the Heracleon Museum.
Either way, it's not news to me.
Okay.
And I think I knew something about it. Anyway, point is, it's kind of a cool thing because we still don't know anything about it.
Yeah, it's very cool. Yeah. And I do love when National Geographic or one of these groups does a deep dive on a mysterious object like this, because it's kind of one of the fun parts about archaeology is sort of guessing what these things were used for, what they say, you know.
Again, the archaeologists are guessing, but it's clearly a map to how to find dilithium crystals.
Oh my God, get out.
For your spaceship.
Okay, right. So in 1908, an Italian archaeologist excavating in Crete discovered this small clay disc bearing symbols written in an unknown script.
Yep.
And his name was Federico Halber. And his student, Luigi Pernier, and their team, they were excavating at the site of a Minoan palace at Phaistos, which is why it's called the Phaistos disc.
Yeah. Does every Italian excavation team have a Luigi on it or a Mario?
Yeah, because they're super common names in Italy, not just in Nintendo games.
Oh, okay. So I guess Japan wasn't just doing like cultural appropriation, is like totally real.
No, like those are just, don't you remember the names of our office mates when we were in Italy, when we rented that office space? Do you remember their names? I
really don't. I kind of forgot we had office
mates.
They were
Mario and Luigi.
That's hilarious. Yeah. I completely forgot about that.
I don't remember their last names. I just remember it being Mario and Luigi. That's when I changed my text sound to Mario entering a tunnel in the old Nintendo game from back in the day.
That's pretty funny.
And that's still my text sound almost 10 years later. So,
because it's funny, because I have, as an aside to our one hater, I have a client right now with my other job that I do that is Italian, and the business is Italian, but there's like 4 or 5 people on the call every Monday that we do it. Not a single one of them is named Mario or Luigi.
Oh, well, it can't be everybody.
But I have 3. I have a Marco, and 3 of them are named the same thing. What is it? I totally forgot. I just can't. It totally escaped me.
Antonio?
No, it's not Antonio. I'll think of it later on.
Okay.
Oh, and Angelo. Angelo.
Oh, you have 3 Angelos?
Yeah, 3 Angelos.
Well,
and a Marco.
okay.
I can't remember the other guy because he never talks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, but no Mario and no Luigi.
Okay. Well. Yeah. Anyway, all that aside.
Yes. Anyway, yes, in an underground deposit at the palace, they did find this brown clay disc, and it was covered in images on both sides and in a spiral shape.
Yes.
Yeah. And they call it the Phaistos disc because that's where it was found, because people are not clever.
No, but it is very distinctive, right?
Yeah.
So we don't know what these inscriptions mean, but we do know that it dates to 1800 to 1600 BCE.
Yeah.
And I think that was done with like either relative dating or other. The palace is a pretty well-known date, and those deposits were pretty easy to date. So yeah.
The cool thing is this wasn't etched using reeds or anything like that, like would have been done typically of those kinds of symbols. It was pressed. Yeah. Like you would see in a printing press or something like that. Yeah. And it was pressed into wet clay using like a mold or something.
Which is super interesting because you have to have all these symbols. We'll get to how many of them there were, but made up already. Yeah. So there's this Instagram page I like to follow, which is this girl who does basically ancient Chinese techniques. It's really cool. I might actually find it and link to it because there's a lot of crossover with archaeology because she's doing ancient techniques for things, whatever thing. It's all kinds of things. It's dyeing. It's in one case she did printing, and she literally was making the Chinese symbols, carving them into these little, like, I'm not sure what they were, but they were little like die shaped, cube things, and she was carving the shape of the thing in, and then she used that to print with ink onto paper, but you could also press it into clay or something like that to make the impression of it. Sure. Anyway, so much work went into that. So like, where are the other things that they impressed using these molds, right? Yeah. You don't make a full set of molds to communicate with and then not use them for other things. Right. So where are they? Yeah. I'm so intrigued. I want to find more. I know. Yeah, the size of it was they said it was about palm size, but a little bigger than palm. A little bit bigger, yeah. 6.5 inches in diameter, about 1.5 inches thick. But you could have held it in your hand relatively easily. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that leads to one theory by some people is that it was some kind of portable astronomical chart, maybe, because they could carry it around pretty easily with them. And I guess astronomy would be the type of thing that you might need a reference that you could carry easily. There's probably other things that you would need to carry around with you too in reference, but it could be some kind of reference like that. I know my one detractor to being an astronomical chart is that typically you need those at night. Yeah. And it's not like they had a flashlight. Yeah. And you'd kind of destroy your eyes trying to use some sort of a lantern or, I guess torch or something like that, or some sort of a fire to read this disc at night while you're trying to look at the stars. I mean, like, come on, seriously. That actually, when you put it that way, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I guess maybe. I know. And if the moon is out all bright, you kind of like destroyed all your stars anyway. So yeah. I don't know. I don't really buy it. Well, maybe one of these other theories is the right one. Yeah. So there's another one that it's maybe some kind of game, something along the lines of snakes and ladders, because the images are in this spiral shape. So I guess you could go in a certain direction, and maybe the things that you're landing on are telling you to do different things. So I guess it's possible. Or of course, ritual. Or of course, no, we don't have ritual as an option. Well, it said a religious hymn, which is basically ritual. Yeah. Well, yes, it does say that. But there's a very specific reason why, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So, but yeah, religious hymn is another possibility. And then, of course, we have to talk about the ancient aliens theories. I mean, do we have to? It's just some people have said it could be mapped to Atlantis or from Atlantis. Or from Atlantis. Yeah. So. Yeah. Or a map of the Minotaur's labyrinth. Anyway.
The disc bears an inscription consisting of 45 different figurative signs repeated in an organized sequence of 241 or 242 characters. One of them is actually not very
legible.
Clear. Yeah, or legible, so they're not really too sure on that.
Yeah, that's why the confusion there.
Right. But the rest are super clear, and you can really tell what they are. Humans, animals, plants, tools, other obviously identifiable objects. Yeah.
And those symbols are grouped into 61 boxes. There's 30 on one side and 31 on the other side. And on both sides, it's sort of that spiral shape where you could see it as starting in the middle and then spiraling out from there.
Yeah. Yeah, and the researchers believe the signs are part of an Aegean-style syllabic writing system, similar to, there was, Minoan Linear A or something like that.
There's Linear A. There's also the Cretan script, which might have been a precursor to Linear A.
Yeah.
They're saying that these symbols are distinctly different from both of those. So it could have been sort of a branch that went off and then went in its own direction, and then it was never really, carried on, and it just ended at some point.
Right.
It's possible. But each group of symbols in these boxes might represent a word or a couple words, a phrase, something like that. Again, they're not sure. They don't know. So
yeah. It's hard to say because you've got different language systems and writing systems that do that kind of thing. Like when they first figured out in Egyptian hieroglyphics that all the symbols within an oval shape or a cartouche represents the name of a pharaoh. Right. That was huge.
Yeah.
Like, as soon as they knew that, they were like, oh, okay, well, once we figured that out, all of these are pharaohs.
Right.
Now we just have to figure out these pharaoh names, and then we can take all of these and just pull them all out because we know all those are pharaohs.
Yeah.
And that was massive.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
Yeah.
And that's what they're going to need in order to decipher this, is some kind of like Rosetta Stone type of thing where it puts it up against another language that we do know how to read, because I just can't see them being able to decipher this.
Yeah.
But going back to the actual words themselves, or symbols, really.
Yeah.
If we assume that each box contains one word, and that's just an assumption, it could be wrong, but they did notice that many phrases begin or end with the same or similar words, just looking at the way the symbols are organized within the boxes, right? So many of the boxes on side A begin with the same signs. And when they begin with the same thing over and over and over again, that suggests like a repeated phrase potentially. Or maybe not each box, but like there'll be a series starting with one and then that sign again. So you could almost see it as like a phrase or something like that.
Yeah.
And then on side B, it's a slightly different thing going on. They're noticing these, what they're calling phrases, ending in the same or similar sign. Right. So that would suggest rhyming potentially. But again, you're looking at all this with your own like framework of language in your mind. So I don't really know if you can make those assumptions. And they say pretty clearly in the article, it's just a guess. It's just a guess. They're just looking for patterns and noticing these things. Maybe it could mean this. But the rhyming thing and the repetitive thing that's possibly happening is why they have suggested maybe a poem or a hymn or something religious, because they do tend to have those rhyming phrases or repetitive phrases. At least they do now in our current religions that we know, so like you have to like step outside of your own context in order to like try and interpret these things, I guess.
Clearly instructions for how to fire up your spaceship.
I mean, it could be. Maybe not a spaceship. Definitely not a spaceship.
Clearly instructions.
Can we like agree to not have ancient aliens in an episode? Like just once. Like just one episode. Like no aliens, please. All right. Segue, please.
All right. So, so that's it for that segment. We're going to move on now to Scandinavian Bronze Age boatyards that are apparently hiding in plain sight. Back in a minute. Welcome back to the Archaeology Show, episode 278. I do say the episode.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
I'm not crazy.
But only on the second and third segments.
Second and third, yeah. That's the part I was apparently never paid attention to for 200 episodes or however long we've been doing this.
Again, if you'd like to be a host of the Archaeology Show,
quit firing me.
Right, Tristan at.
Quit firing me on mic,
Podcast
on
Network.
air. We are on air. You cannot fire me.
All right, so this article is from the Smithsonian, and it's called "These markers of Scandinavia's Bronze Age boatyards were hiding in plain sight. Mm-hmm. Of course.
Of course.
Basically saying archaeologists are idiots, and we're going to tell you why.
I feel like they need to have words like might be hiding in plain sight or maybe markers, because, well, we'll get to it, but it's a big maybe for me personally.
Well, sure. It's also an article that's letting you know that, hey, sometimes things get reevaluated in light of new evidence, or sometimes, hey, we learn new things, we see new things, and we go look at other things in a different light, or maybe it's just... Maybe sometimes even new people come along. I'm not even saying that this has happened in this article.
Yeah.
But things get looked at differently and in different ways for different reasons all the time. And then you reevaluate what you know.
Yeah.
So
it's really important for archaeology as a discipline to be comfortable with that reevaluation because we do learn things, and something that somebody analyzed 50 years ago could be totally different today, or the methods are more advanced or whatever. So this is a less, advancement in science thing and more of it's like a light bulb moment. Like, maybe these things that we thought were one thing are actually another thing.
Yeah.
So, and that would be boat making.
That's right.
Yeah.
So boats have always been important to the cultures of Scandinavia. Yeah. Even before the Vikings, the ones we know about.
Yeah.
Because, they live on
the coast,
rocky coastland dotted with islands and fjords and stuff.
Yeah.
And, you just have a lot of water.
Yeah.
You need boats to get around.
Exactly. And we know beyond just the logicalness of boating, there are tens of thousands of rock art depictions of prehistoric ships on the rocks in Scandinavia along the coastline, all over the place. And there's an image actually at the very beginning of the article showing some of these really, really cool pictograph images of what are very clearly boats. So,
Either that or they're really wide, gnarly smiles.
Maybe they're combs.
They could be combs. Yep. Combs for those animals that I can see. Yes.
Comb those animals.
Combs.
Okay.
Maybe they're dinosaurs.
No, they're not dinosaurs. That one does have a long neck, though.
It could be spaceships.
Look at that one over on the left side. Yeah. That's like a giraffe. They didn't have giraffes in Scandinavia.
It's definitely Nessie.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, anyway, go look. Rock art is really fun to look at because it's like what in the actual world was going on in the minds of these people when they made these images. We don't know.
Right.
But we do know that these are boats.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
While we know that they had boats, we don't have a lot of evidence on how or where they were building them, at least in these early populations. We know about Vikings, but before that.
Right, which is something archaeologists are always interested in. We like to know the wheres and the hows of things.
We do like the wheres and hows. And the when did they start too? The
where's, the hows, and the whens.
So where's the hows and the firsts?
Yeah, the firsts.
The firsts.
Yeah.
Which this isn't about that, but that's just in general.
Right.
Yeah.
So we already mentioned the Bronze Age, which we need to, of course, define in this area because as we've learned in this show, the Bronze Age is different everywhere.
Yes,
right?
It is.
So here, in Scandinavia, the Bronze Age was from 2000 to 500 BCE. And there's evidence that long distance trade happened across the continent.
Yeah, apparently they have evidence of artifacts from almost practically around the world, except for, North America.
Yeah.
In this time period. So they know that people were trading.
Yeah.
And given the distances, some of it must have happened via ship.
Yeah.
Because we have these images of ships on the rocks and they're coming from very far away places. Ships certainly had to have been involved at some point. But wood does not preserve well in wet environments, and this is a very wet environment. We have very little evidence of actual physical ships themselves that date to this time period.
So researchers have started looking for evidence of shipbuilding instead, of course.
Yeah.
One telltale sign is the existence of pits with evidence that people used fire to hollow out trees and expand the shape of wood, which is cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. We were just watching that in the show we were watching last night. Oh, in Lord of the Rings.
Oh my God.
They were building ships in an episode in the new Lord of the Rings show. So
yeah, but they weren't really doing that.
No, but they were they were shaping wood.
They were shaping wood for sure. They were actually making rings. So
well, but they were doing ships.
Yeah, they were doing ships. Yeah, they were definitely making ships.
Yeah.
Indigenous peoples of British Columbia in Canada and other parts of North America used fire pits for boat building, and those techniques are very well documented.
Yeah, even to today, there's populations that still make boats in this manner. So we know how it was done from this like ethnographic evidence. And it sounds like they're kind of applying not that evidence itself, but like looking at those techniques and how they do them today and how that evidence would look in the archaeological record, basically. Mikael Favil, an anthropological archaeologist at Lund University in Sweden, he says that early Scandinavians probably used some of these same techniques, which is why they're talking about looking for evidence that matches what they see in these North American communities.
Yeah, it turns out the coast of Scandinavia has tons of well-documented Bronze Age pits.
Yeah.
They're everywhere.
Well, sure. I mean, and what did we think that they were using those fire pits for?
Yeah, they thought they were cooking food in them.
Cooking food.
Yeah.
All those pits were all for cooking food.
And maybe they did.
They might have.
Yep.
You know, you could roast a lamb leg on one side of the pit and then, you know, fire the wood for your boat on the other side so that you can bend it into shape, right?
Yeah. But it turns out a lot of these pits are on long beaches and would have been perfect for boat building.
Yeah.
So turns out that's what they probably did.
It's possible. It's just like one thing you have to consider that these fire pits might have been used for, right?
Yeah.
And one of their things too is that if there is no evidence of food preparation around this fire pit, then it kind of would make sense to reclassify it as a boat building site.
Right.
Because food preparation is messy. There's bone bits everywhere. There's, you know, the fatty oils and stuff from the meat. Like that's all going to be present in a fire, and you're going to be able to do the examination and find that stuff out. If you just have wood, I guess it could have been for warmth. They needed that too. But I don't know. Fires were just more... They had more uses than that. So it seems like a good assumption that it would have been for another thing like boat building. Yeah.
Well, along the same lines, if there's pits all over the rest of the world, they know, you know, the Pacific Northwest in North America or the United States and then British Columbia in Canada. I mean, if there's other evidence along with those pits that they could look for, then if they're going to reclassify these, then they could try to look for other stuff now and go do some re-examination.
Yeah, because there must be tools that are specific to boat building too. And while you might not have the whatever wooden handles were on the tools, you would have the stone itself probably, right?
It was the Bronze Age too.
Oh, it was the Bronze Age, yeah. So you might have some metal artifacts,
right? Which
might fall apart in this like wet environment.
Sure.
So,
but still,
it's possible.
You know,
yeah,
there could be some stuff around.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. The other thing I remember too is that the populations in British Columbia would use steam to help bend the wood into the shape that they wanted in. Yeah. So I could really see a shared fire situation with that, because steam is boiled water, right? Yeah. So you could be literally like cooking a pot of food and using the steam from that pot to also bend wood at the same time. Like it really could be shared. They invented the sauna in Finland too. Oh, they did. Yeah. So all over Scandinavia, I'm sure that technology was pretty common. So I don't know when they invented it, but they basically invented the sauna. Yeah. In fact, they call it the sauna. Sauna. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So I think it makes sense to kind of look at all these fire pits with an eye to boat building too. Yeah. Or wood bending. Woodbenders. Isn't that that's from, wow, you're learning. Are you going to watch Avatar so that you can actually know what you're talking about? No, I don't know what I'm talking about. It's not exactly a woodbender, but you know, I guess Earth. Yeah. Okay. We're not going to get into it. But anyway, we'll go watch Last Airbender and then come back and talk about it. Actually saying Bender one makes me want to watch Futurama, but that's another story. Yeah. Well, you're old. That's your Gen X-ness coming in. Come on. All right. Okay. All right. Well, we're going to go out to go see the ocean. Go out to the shore. Yeah. To the shore. Yeah. To the shore and the boardwalk we go. Yep. All right. Yep. See you next week. Bye. Bye. Thanks for listening to The Archaeology Show. Feel free to comment and view the show notes on the website at www.arcpodnet.com. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at ArcPodNet. Music for this show is called I Wish You Would Look from the band Sea Hero. Again, thanks for listening and have an awesome day. This episode was produced by Chris Webster from his RV traveling the United States, Tristan Boyle in Scotland, DigTech LLC, Cultural Media, and the Archaeology Podcast Network, and was edited by Chris Webster and Rachel Roden.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.archpodnet.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.